Hey everybody, welcome back to Constant Collectible, and this is On the Shelf podcast where we take a look at comics, collectibles, characters, and stories that keep us coming back to the shelves. I'm Simon, and today we're looking and talking about one of the biggest shared universes in modern comics. And if you thought the Energon Universe was slowing down after 3 years, the folks at Skybound and Image Comics, along with Hasbro, have some news for you. Because the Energon Universe isn't just alive and well, it's expanding. At this year's San Diego Comic-Con 2026, Skybound and Image Comics, working alongside Hasbro, pulled back the curtain on what's coming next for the Energon Universe. And if you're a fan of Transformers, G.I. Joe, Void Rivals, or the newly launched M.A.S.K, there's a lot to talk about. So today, we're going to take a look at the biggest announcements from the Energon Universe panel and talk about what they could mean for the future in this shared comic book universe. So let's start with the big picture. The Energon Universe has now been going for 3 years. That's actually pretty remarkable when you think about it. Shared universes are nothing new in comics. Marvel and DC have built entire publishing empires around interconnected characters and stories. But what Skybound and Hasbro have been doing with the Energon Universe feels a little different. Instead of launching everything at once, we've watched this universe grow. It started with Void Rivals, which introduced readers to a much larger world than many of us initially realized. Then came Transformers, then G.I. Joe, and now we're seeing M.A.S.K officially become part of the equation. 4 franchises, 1 shared universe, and apparently a whole lot more surprises waiting around the corner. The San Diego Comic-Con panel featured Robert Kirkman, Joshua Williamson, Connor Hughes, and Skybound's Sean Mankiewicz, with creators giving fans a look at what's coming next. And judging by the announcements, the 3rd anniversary isn't a celebration of what the Energon Universe has already accomplished. It's warning that things are about to get even bigger. Let's start with the newest addition to the Energon Universe, M.A.S.K. The series, written by Dan Watters and illustrated by Pear, not sure how to say that, apologies, has officially launched, and Skybound is making it clear that this isn't some side project sitting on the edge of the universe. M.A.S.K has been part of the plan of the Energon Universe for a long time, and now we're finally seeing the pieces fall into place. At San Diego Comic-Con, fans got an exclusive look at the all-new trailer, along with new character designs for 2 important characters, Scott Tracker, Matt Tracker's son, and T-Bob, his trusty protector. And honestly, this is one of the things I find most interesting about the Energon Universe. It's not just taking recognizable names and putting them on comic book covers. It's about rebuilding these franchises for a modern audience while creating connections between them. We've already seen how Transformers and G.I. Joe can exist in this world. Now we're getting M.A.S.K, and the big question becomes, how deeply is this franchise going to connect with everything else? Because if you're building toward a true shared universe, you have to assume that these characters aren't going to remain isolated forever. The question isn't whether these worlds will collide, it's when, and we're starting to see pieces of that happen now. And perhaps more importantly, how are they going to interconnect? It's the Energon Universe, so a lot of this is about the Energon. Now let's talk about the series that started it all, Void Rivals. If you've been following the series, you know that things have changed dramatically following the events of the Quintesson Wars, right? At SDCC, Robert Kirkman and series artist Connor Hughes discuss what's coming next. And one of the biggest reveals, Rom, is coming to the Sacred Ring. For longtime fans of this classic properties, that's a pretty significant announcement. But Rom isn't the only thing coming. The panel also introduced new characters, Predacons, a bounty hunter who looks to be bringing another layer of danger to an already complicated story. And there's also a new artist joining the series, Frank Mazzoli. It's always interesting to see an ongoing comic evolve artistically, especially when you're entertaining a new story arc. Connor Hughes has helped establish the visual identity of the part of the Energon universe, and now we're going to see how Mazzoli approaches the world and characters. And with Rom entering the Sacred Ring, well, I think it's safe to say that Void Rivals is continuing to prove that it's much more important to the overall Energon universe than some readers may have initially realized, including myself. This is the series that keeps reminding us that there's a much bigger picture happening beyond Earth, and I'm very curious to see how the events of Void Rivals eventually connect back to the larger Transformers and G.I. Joe storyline, which some of it you have seen due to who has been in Void Rivals. I don't want to talk spoilers. Next up, we've got G.I. Joe, and according to the announcements coming out of San Diego Comic-Con, the series is about to enter its biggest story arc yet. Issue 25 is arriving in August, and it's an extra-sized issue that sets the stage for what's being called G.I. Joe vs. Night Force. Writer Joshua Williamson was on hand at the panel to talk about the events that had led the series to this point. And if you've been following G.I. Joe, you know that this version of the franchise has been taking some interesting steps away from what we might expect from a traditional status quo. The Energon Universe has given the franchise room to rebuild itself, and now we're getting another major player, Major Medusa. The brand new Cobra character has revealed for the first time at the panel, complete with a new character design. We don't know everything about her yet, and honestly, that's probably the point. But based on the little bit that we've been shown, it looks like Major Medusa could become an important part of what's coming next. And with G.I. Joe 26 cover already being shown, it seems like the storyline is going to move quickly. The big question for me is how G.I. Joe vs. Night Force fits into the larger Energon universe, and it's always going to be those major questions. Because the more of these individual series develop, the more we're seeing the walls between these franchises begin to come down. And that's where the Energon universe gets really interesting. Now, of course, we can't talk about the Energon universe without talking about, of course, Transformers. And if there's one word that seems to define the series, it's change. The series has never been afraid to take familiar characters and put them into unfamiliar situations. And according to Robert Kirkman, that's going to continue. One of the biggest examples is Superion. Superion appears in the main cover of Transformers number 36, and that's a pretty significant change happening there. Thundercracker has been newly christened as an Autobot, sorry, spoilers, and now serving as Superion's new arm. More spoilers, sorry. Yes, you heard that right. Thundercracker, an Autobot, an arm of Superion. If you've been following this version of Transformers, you already know that the series has been willing to challenge expectations. Characters aren't always where we expect them to be. Alliances can change, and the Transformers themselves are evolving in ways that longtime fans may not have anticipated. I know I didn't. The SDCC panel also teased what's coming for Elita Prime. And the question is, just how far is she willing to go to win the war? That's a question that could have some pretty significant consequences, because in the story about war, there is always the question of what someone is willing to sacrifice and achieve in victory. And we've seen the Energon Universe explore that idea from multiple perspectives. Finally, we also learned that Karl Kerschl will be the guest artist for Transformers 37. That's another reason to keep an eye on the series. Different artists bring different interpretations to these characters, and Kerschl's involvement should give us an upcoming issue its own distinct visual identity. Now, here's where I think the Energon Universe gets really interesting. We're 3 years in, and we're still discovering what this universe actually is. That's not something every shared universe can accomplish. Sometimes when you launch a shared universe, you can see the blueprint immediately. You know exactly where everything is going, but the Energon Universe, we've been discovering the connections alongside the characters themselves. Void Rivals opened that door. Transformers showed us what this universe could become. G.I. Joe expanded the scope, and now M.A.S.K is stepping into the spotlight. Meanwhile, characters like Rom are arriving, new characters like Major Medusa and Predacron are being introduced, and familiar characters like Thundercracker are taking on completely new roles. And that brings us back to the big question, where is all of this going? Because Skybound and Hasbro are clearly playing a long game. The goal isn't just to create 4 successful comic series. The goal is to build an interconnected universe where the choices made in one book can eventually affect the other. And if they can pull that off, the Energon Universe could become one of the defining shared universes in modern comics. And this is important, it has to continue earning it, right? The books have to remain good. The characters have to matter. The connections have to feel organic. You can't just expect everything because you can. The story has to come first. So far, the Energon Universe has done a pretty good job of keeping readers interested in what comes next. And after the announcements at San Diego Comic-Con, it looks like there's plenty more on the horizon. So, what do you think? Are you excited for the future of the Energon Universe? Are you reading all 4 series? Are you excited about M.A.S.K? What do you think about ROM coming to Void Rivals? And perhaps the biggest question of all is, how long do you think it will be before all these characters and franchises are fully brought together? For me, that's the fun of the Energon Universe. We're watching something big built in real time. We're seeing familiar characters reimagined, new characters introduced, and connections slowly being revealed. And 3 years in, it feels like the story is just getting started. That's going to do it for this day's episode of Constant Collectible on the Shelf. If you're enjoying the show, make sure that you follow, subscribe, wherever you're listening. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe button, turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode. You can also follow Constant Collectible, more comic news, reviews, collectibles, and all things geek culture. Until next time, keep reading, keep collecting, and remember, there's always something new waiting for you on the shelf. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.